Okay, we're back. And this time I'm just going to run you through some really useful resources when it comes to planning for your goal race and just generally run you through the process that I follow for our athletes um, when it comes to preparing them for a goal race. So let's get into it. So this is going to be our little case study. This is meant to be my main goal for the year. But we'll see what happens. So this is Exterra Ardennes. This is a long distance, half iron distance um, off-road triathlon. So it's a swim in a reservoir, a gravel ride for about 70k, and then an off-road run. Um, and yeah, it should be a really cool one. I think kind of the first thing to say when it comes to the planning process is get on the website early, get on that athlete guide as soon as it comes out, and do it well in advance. I can remember one time where I didn't do that because it's for a relatively small lake, a small race at Dorney. And I perhaps approached the race with a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of complacency, and I didn't read the athlete guide. Just checked my time, turned up, and the whole course had changed. The car park was in a different place. Long story short, it ended up with me sprinting to the race start because I was just so bobulated, and my whole process was thrown. So yeah, make sure you get on that athlete guide as soon as it comes out, because there's always some little nuances that's important. No, it doesn't really matter what the race is. And next one, so if we start with the swim, the swim should be relatively straightforward because it is in a reservoir, so it should be very calm. But I'll just run you through some of the things that I look at when it comes to analysing the swim for a triathlon. And most of what I'm going to only the swim section is highly relevant for triathlon. When I talk about the bike, that was obviously going to be very relevant for any bike racing, any gravel racing, of course the run. I'll talk kind of stuff that's relevant to marathon, half marathon preparation as well. So for the swim though, should be relatively straightforward, but there's a couple of things that I would start to dig into. One is the form of the course, and then the other is like the conditions, putting in weather, etc. So one of the things that I immediately noticed is like it's quite exposed. It's quite a big lake. Particularly, imagine the wind whistling down through the valleys and across the lake. So I would predict a bit of a headwind. Actually, I mean, I'll obviously check the weather conditions and the wind conditions before. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what I would anticipate. Um, at some point, you'd have a headwind. Wind actually makes a big impact in swimming. You might not think it does because you're so low in the water, but swimming into a headwind is a lot harder than swimming it with a tailwind. And if the wind is blustery enough and enough, it can actually create a surprising amount of chop on a lake this size. So yeah, that's one of the things I would just start to keep an eye on is the weather for the swim. Next, I would look at the form of the swim. So again, quite straightforward. It's kind of like an out and back type course. But one thing I immediately noticed, we're gonna have a hard first 300 meters. The first turn is after about 300 meters, so I expect this whole 300 pretty mental, and then this first buoy to be yeah, pretty hellish. So that will impact my training. So I'll be doing a lot of 300, 400 full gas efforts in my training leading up to this from a stationary position, because I just know that's going to be chaos. Then a good 700 meters until the next turn, so plenty of time to get into a nice rhythm. These two boys, hopefully it would have spread out by now, but I would expect these two boys to be a bit chaotic as well. Um, and then one of the things that I would do, maybe not so much for this course because the course doesn't really lend itself to it, but particularly for an iron distance or a longer swim, I would look to start picking out landmarks that I can use to gauge progress. So the classic example for me was Ironman Maastricht a few years ago. There's about 3 or 4 bridges up until the turn point, and so I could just tick off the bridges as I went, so I know roughly how I was progressing through the course. Because swimming, in particular, it can feel like you're just swimming for an eternity. You don't have that ability break down the course. Obviously, in this instance, I just know where the boys are going to be. 700 stretch is going to be feel quite long, and then likewise, this looks like it'll be slightly longer than 700, probably closer to 800 before we hit that final buoy. And then what I would start to drill down into is the exit, as that will influence how I exit the water. So, for example, transition I assume will be here. I haven't got the information on that yet, but um, what I immediately notice is there's a 20-meter rise here. And it's not a huge amount, but it's a little bit of a hill basically getting out of the water. And so I just know that actually I need to ease off probably for the last 100 meters or so, really get my breath back. Because when you step out the water and the blood redistributes, you're a little bit like Doolally. And then running up a hill, your heart rate is going to be through the roof. So there's not going to be a huge amount to be gained by pumping in the last sort of 50, 100 meters. Actually, I want to recover a little bit so that I can jog up this hill pretty controlled. Don't want to sprint up it, because when I get to transition, I want to be able to have the clarity of mind to make sensible decisions. So I won't be sprinting up this hill. If someone overtakes me, fine, because I just know I'll get them back in transition, because hopefully they will be all over the place and I'll be able to do it very nice and smooth. So that's the swim. Those are just a few things to have a look at. Also, have a look on Google Maps, just kind of what the location is like. It looks beautiful, but very exposed, as I say. That's the swim. Moving on to the run, I would get the GPX from the organizer. Not so much to have a look at it in Strava, because Strava's analytics aren't the best. But what I would then do is have a look at it on VeloViewer. So this is a really great, largely free resource. It links with your Strava profile, and you can pull in routes, and then start to dig into Strava segments, or you can start to look into segments yourself. So I can immediately see kind of what the characteristics of this are. It's obviously an off-road gravel course, but I can see how it breaks down. You've got these first 3 or 4 little kickers, which it will be very, very tempting to go hard on. And I think if this was a gravel race rather than a triathlon, I would expect these first 4 little kicks to be, full gas efforts, as everyone's trying to break up the pack. For a triathlon, though, I need to know. I know I need to take these in a relatively controlled manner, because you've only got a very short descent before we then got 1, 2, and then 3 longer climbs. Particularly this middle one, that looks like it's going to feel like it goes on forever. It looks very draggy, little bit of a kick in the middle, and then you just go through the course like that, making notes, drilling down into segments, noting down what the gradient's going to be like in certain places. And all this is about being able to control what you can control. So knowledge, as the saying goes, is power. And in this instance, I can break the course down, know when I need to push, know when I need to relax, know, with my characteristics as a rider, when I can kind of maximize those. I'm probably not the best climber, because I'm a rugby and a bit heavier than I probably would like. So I know, on these I need to take these steady, but my skills are good. So if there's an opportunity, I'm looking at these switchback areas here, towards the end, if areas like that are areas where I can make up potentially a good amount of time. So that's just one little thing. That's just a few things on the bike course. Bellevue is such a useful kind of drilling down into the minutiae of the course, and all of this together really just helps you feel like you know what you're doing, you know what you're in for, and start to use that to impact your training. So I can look at some of these climbs. This whole stretch here is about 10k, breaks up into sort of 3 2-kilometer climbs. So I know in my training, those are the sorts of climbs that I need focusing on. And fortunately, we've got some good climbs for that. So I know what I need to do in terms of hill preparation. Um, and the chances are other people won't be. So it's hopefully should give you a feeling of like, yeah, I can gain myself an advantage just by a little bit of research. So staying on the bike for a little while, another really great resource is my windsock. Again, free. Just plug in the Strava URL for the route, and again, so this is just a wrap. This is just today's, but you can straight away start to see, um, you know, how the course goes. 50% headwind, 50% tailwind. You can start to drill down into how strong the wind is going to be. So it's going to be kind of relatively strong today. If I was racing, it's relatively strong. But couple this with Velo Viewer, you can start to break down the course, and just know where the headwind is going to come. So from a mental perspective, that can be really helpful. So for instance, this top section here where you've got head across head, relatively strong. If people are absolutely railing it through here, although this looks, I think a lot of this was downhill. But let's say it's a steady uphill. If people are gunning it past me, I'll be like, okay, well, I'm working sort of tempo level. This My speed has dropped, but it's because I'm going into a headwind. These guys must be absolutely smashing themselves to go that much faster than me. So I'm just going to let them go, and then I'll reel them back once they've blown the doors off towards the end of the race, towards the end of the bike. And it's these sorts of things that you can really start to inform your tactics, your strategy, just because you've got that little bit of knowledge, and it gives you the confidence to let people go or to attack, depending on the scenario. But yeah, again, make notes on this, break down the call, and start to piece it together. Obviously, using my windsock in conjunction, maybe not so weather because it's not the best, but using weather reports and just so getting a better understanding of kind of how, what, for instance, I was saying earlier, the wind looks pretty strong today, 15, 16 mile an hour wind, which isn't crazy, but it's, you're going to feel that. And then also the weather, going to be chucking it down today. So yeah, you start to just build a picture, and then what this all culminates in a nice, pretty race plan. So this is what I did in 2022 for my master, and quickly trying to see. I just put everything in one place. That was my goal when it came to the race plan, and this is the most prepared I've been for a race. I had an absolute hellish race because of algae in the water, which I've not well, as were a lot of people. But in terms of conditioning, in terms of feeling prepared, this was the best ever. And you can see, drill down, it had my pre-race fueling, how I was going to approach the swim. I talked about the 3 or 4 bridges, to help me gauge how progress is like. Broke down the bike course, and kind of what my projected times were, wind speed, all of what we've kind of discussed, where the aid stations were. Then likewise on the run, and also really recommended. Sounds so patronising, but do a kit list, okay? Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to an event and forgotten something really basic. Like I went to triathlon once and got trainers, like really dumb stuff. Or I once forgot cycling shoes, so I actually had to do a 40k bike leg riding in my trainers on top of the clips on my bike. Stuff I should not be doing as a very experienced coach and athlete. So this is what it should all culminate in, a some form of detailed race plan. And obviously, you don't have to do that for every race, but particularly for your big races, and you can do light versions the races. So hopefully that's helpful. Slightly over 10 minutes, but hopefully it was worth it.